When the power grid collapses for good, when supply chains snap like brittle bones, when grocery store shelves stand empty and stay empty, you're going to understand something that most people will learn far too late. The difference between those who make it through the first brutal winter and those who won't be luck. It won't be location. It won't even be how much ammunition you stockpiled. It will come down to something far more mundane, far more essential, and infinitely more overlooked. Food that doesn't quit on you. Food that sits in your pantry while governments crumble and societies reorganize themselves around violence and scarcity. Food that your grandchildren could theoretically eat. Most preppers get this catastrophically wrong. They fill garages with canned goods, stamped with expiration dates. They rotate stock like they're running a corner store, and they convince themselves that 5 years of shelf life means safety. It doesn't. In a true collapse scenario, those dates become psychological torture, making you second-guess every meal, forcing you to consume food on an arbitrary schedule while chaos rages outside. The science here is brutally simple. True food preservation isn't about slowing decay, it's about creating an environment where decay cannot occur at all. No moisture, no oxygen, no bacterial activity, no enzymatic breakdown. Total suspension. Let's start with honey, because it's the most forgiving substance nature ever engineered. Archaeologists have pulled 3,000-year-old honey from Egyptian tombs and found it perfectly edible. The chemistry is elegant in its hostility to life. Honey contains almost no water, usually below 18%, which means bacteria and microorganisms simply dehydrate and die on contact. The pH sits around 3.9, acidic enough to burn through biological processes. And bees, those accidental chemists, add an enzyme that produces hydrogen peroxide as a preservative. Store it in a sealed container, keep it dry, and it will outlast your civilization's collapse and the one that comes after, when everything else fails. When you're trading bullets for calories, honey becomes liquid gold, both literally and economically. White rice follows the same principle through a different mechanism. The reason white rice endures, while brown rice turns rancid, is violence at the molecular level. Brown rice contains oils in its bran layer, oils that oxidize and rot. White rice has been stripped of that vulnerability through milling. What remains is pure starch, densely packed carbohydrate with no pathway to decay. Store it in mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. Keep it away from moisture and heat, and you're looking at decades of edibility, possibly centuries. The science is confirmed, not through tradition, but through chemistry labs analyzing rice from shipwrecks. In the aftermath, rice becomes the foundation of survival. The caloric bedrock that keeps your body moving when the world stops making sense. Salt is so permanent, so unchanging, that calling it food almost misses the point. It's geology masquerading as nutrition. Sodium chloride is a crystalline structure that bacteria cannot metabolize, water cannot spoil, and time cannot touch. The salt you harvest today is the same molecular structure that existed when dinosaurs walked the earth. Beyond preservation, salt becomes the preservation itself. It's how you keep meat edible, how you cure fish, how you make winter food in a world without refrigeration. After collapse, salt transforms into currency more reliable than precious metals, because you can't eat gold, but you absolutely need sodium to survive. Store it in any container that keeps out moisture and forget about it until you need to barter for your life. Dried beans and legumes represent patient survival. They're seeds in suspended animation, waiting for water to trigger germination. Remove that water, and they wait indefinitely. The protein and fiber content makes them irreplaceable in a collapsed diet. Muscle breakdown happens fast when you're working physically, demanding survival tasks without adequate protein. Beans prevent that. The key is storage with obsessive attention to moisture control. Any humidity above 10% and you're inviting mold, insects, and degradation. Vacuum seal them or use 5-gallon buckets with gamma lids and oxygen absorbers. People have cooked beans, stored for 30 years, and found them nutritionally intact, just requiring longer cook times. When society breaks, beans become the difference between maintaining strength and wasting away. Maple syrup in its pure form is another miracle of chemistry. The sugar concentration is so high, around 67%, that osmotic pressure literally pulls water out of any bacterial cells attempting to colonize it. Boil it properly during production, seal it correctly, and it simply doesn't spoil. It might crystallize over time, but that's just sugar formation, not decay. Heat it gently, and it returns to liquid. Beyond calories, maple syrup provides trace minerals and becomes a psychological comfort in times of extreme deprivation. Humans crave sweetness when stressed. It's evolutionary wiring. Having access to something that tastes good, that reminds you of normalcy, can be the difference between maintaining mental stability and breaking down completely. Vinegar is acid weaponized against time. 5% acetic acid is sufficient to kill bacteria, prevent fungal growth, and remain chemically stable, essentially forever. White distilled vinegar, in particular, is nearly immortal. Use it for food preservation. Use it for cleaning wounds when antibiotics become ancient history. Use it for sanitation when waterborne diseases start killing the unprepared. The Romans understood this. They gave their soldiers vinegar as a survival staple because it was more reliable than wine and safer than water. Store it in glass or food-grade plastic and accept that you now own a resource that will outlive you. Cornstarch rounds out the stockpile with pure, concentrated carbohydrate. Like white rice, it's been refined to the point where nothing remains for bacteria to consume. No oils, no proteins to denature, just starch molecules that sit inert until you add water and heat. Beyond calories, cornstarch becomes a tool, a thickening agent that turns thin soup into something substantial, that makes limited food stretch further. Store it sealed against moisture, and you're set for the long darkness. The psychological component here cannot be overstated. When you watch society disintegrate, when you see neighbors turning on each other over the last canned goods, when violence becomes the language of resource distribution, having food that you know absolutely will not expire creates mental space for strategic thinking. You're not panicking about spoilage. You're not forced into desperate consumption schedules. You can wait. You can plan. You can make decisions based on logic rather than fear-driven scarcity. The final truth is this: preparation is the only firewall between you and becoming a statistic. The people who make it through collapse aren't stronger or smarter or more ruthless. They're simply the ones who understood that survival is about eliminating variables, about creating certainty in a world defined by chaos. Stockpile these 7 foods now, while it's legal and easy and cheap, because when the moment comes, when the last delivery truck makes its final run, you won't be the one breaking down doors for expired canned goods. You'll be the one who planned beyond the panic, who thought in decades while others thought in weeks. The survivors aren't the hopeful, they're the prepared.